I remember when it happened to me like it was yesterday. All my life, I had always been very calm. Never had strong emotional swings one way or the other. So on this particular day, my experience was so foreign that I really didn't know what to do with it. It was something I had never experienced before. We were laying in bed. I was with my wife, and we were about maybe not quite 10 years into our marriage, getting ready for bed, getting ready for night. And she says, "John, I'm really not happy being married. I don't think I want to be married anymore. I think I want a divorce." And the flood of hormones, of adrenaline, cortisol, anger, it's hard for me to put it into words. It was such a significant experience that I was almost blinded. It was like I wanted to lash out in some way. I wanted to physically lash out. I wanted to emotionally lash out. But my brain just seemed to stop working in that moment. It was like I didn't have the words to say. That is what happens when your sympathetic nervous system takes over. You get into that fight or flight mechanism, that mode, and all the blood rushes away from your brain. It goes to your extremities because you're ready to fight or flee. Well, there was no fighting or fleeing in that moment for me. I was paralyzed in that moment. And of course, as you know, there's no better time to get really upsetting news than right before you're going to go to sleep. That's like the best time to get it, isn't it? So today, I want to talk a little bit about how I respond to guys who say, "You know, I got this great girlfriend. We've been together for a long time. I'm thinking I'd like to get married. Well, what's your advice?" So today, I'm going to give you the good and the bad. I'm going to tell you the advantages and disadvantages, and hopefully you'll find this information helpful. It's almost like a part 2 to the video I set out last weekend. I think that you'll find it fascinating. So let's talk about it. Marriage and divorce are two of life's most defining moments. And answering that question for someone else, or trying to answer it, or even advise them as to what the best course of action is very, very difficult. Now, I know there's a lot of guys on this channel who would say, the answer is really quite simple. The answer is no, don't do it. But I would argue that there's more to it than that. I believe that my marriage, for all of its shortcomings, did more to help me transform into a better man than anything else I could have experienced that I can think of. Now, I know that's a tough thing for a lot of people to hear because it sounds contrary to a lot of the advice I've given in the past. And although I stand by everything I've said and all the craziness I went through and the emotional difficulties and all of that, but it was from that process that I was able to find within myself a much stronger, better person. Someone who came out of that marriage a completely different man than the guy who went into it. And this guy who came out of it was much more secure, much happier, much more at peace, much more thoughtful, much more capable and than the guy that went into it. So when people ask me, is this something I should do or not do? Well, it's not quite as simple as that. There's a lot more to this question than meets the eye. Loving relationships are the emotional muscle building equipment of life. You will not learn more or grow more from any other event in your life than being in a relationship with another person. The more intense that relationship is, the more potential for growth is there. And why should you care about growth? Because at the end of the day, all we really want to do is be fulfilled and happy. Well, I would argue, and I think successfully, that in order for you to be fulfilled and happy in your life, you're probably going to have to be a better person. You're going to have to be constantly on a growth mentality. You've got to be learning and growing and becoming emotionally, intellectually, spiritually stronger. As you can do that, you're going to experience more happiness and fulfillment in your life. And relationships are the pathway toward that kind of growth. So when people say, I'm going my own way, I understand that because, like I said, you put your hand on the fire, you get burned, you withdraw your hand. It's totally normal, totally normal. But I don't think no one withdraws from all human relationships. It's just the romantic relationships are the ones that are the most difficult, and they're the advanced class. So guys who want to go their own way, I understand it. I'm not dissing any of you guys, disrespecting any of you for your decision, but just realize that those relationships with women are the hardest. That's the advanced class. There's no question about it. The risks are the highest, but the potential benefits are the highest as well. Relationships with your children, obviously, they are very, enriching. Relationships with friends are extremely good, helpful, and thought-provoking, and they can certainly help you become a better person. But it's those romantic relationships, not necessarily marriage, but a long-term romantic relationship has all the elements of that you need to build those emotional, spiritual, and intellectual muscles, more so than anything else that you can do in your life. In the gym, I have found that in order for people to achieve their greatest benefit, they need to perform the exercises with correct form and using a full range of motion. The same is true in a relationship. You must approach it with the correct technique. If you're not using the right technique, the advantages are going to be missed. Now, you as an individual have no control over the behavior of another human being. So if your spouse, as mine was, turns out to be emotionally immature, she's stunted in some way, for some reason that I didn't pick up on soon enough. And I think that's what it is. I don't think she's an evil person. I think she's just emotionally immature and she's stunted in some way. And perhaps it has to do with some trauma she experienced as a child, or I don't know, who knows, but it doesn't matter. You just deal with what you deal with. You just have to take things as they are and do your best with them. But you can't control yourself, so you can't control them. They're out of the picture. They're uncontrollable. They are a variable that you have no power over. You can control yourself. And as I said in the video this weekend, moving forward to become the best person that you can be is the best solution. That's how you take control of this situation. Now, you cannot control her, but you can control you. And why that's important is that you control your experience. And when you control your experience, the other person's ability to harm you is significantly reduced. Now, I see a lot of guys in the comments who have had some really terrible, horrific relationships that have gone terribly wrong. And I would argue that the woman that they were married to was perhaps a sociopath. I mean, really that level of just having no empathy, no concern, just a complete sociopath. And dealing with that obviously is tough. That's like the real heavy lifting. The key to this is you need to be able to pull your personality out of the situation, your ego, if you will, and you need to withdraw that emotional attachment, that personal attachment you have to the situation, and try to see this from a different perspective, a higher perspective, one of almost like an objective viewpoint on the experience. And I know that yesterday or the day before when I was making that video, I was talking about how we all have these subjective perspectives. And that is true. When we're living in the moment, we generally have this subjective perspective. However, it is possible to withdraw from that subjectivity, at least for a while, as an intellectual exercise, and try to imagine that you're seeing this experience from a third party, from that of a higher power, as if you are seeing it from a soul perspective, if you will. And you remove judgment from what's happening, and you remove personality from what's happening, and you just view the actions of each of you from an objective standpoint, almost as if it was some kind of a video game. If you can do that, there's so much growth and learning that you can do in that space. There's so much opportunity for you to make decisions more clear-headedly. But it is an exercise, and it's one that, from what I've learned, most people have never done before. So I suggest that you try it. Use it as an imaginary meditation, if you will. Put yourself into a relaxed state, close your eyes, imagine the situation, take your emotions out of it, take your personality out of it, and try to see this from a higher perspective. What's going on here? What could you do differently? What could your avatar in this situation do differently? What outcomes do you want from it? Because if you can see that perspective, you can take that 10,000 foot view or that 100,000 foot view, and you can really see the horizon and what's going on. It'll reduce that fight or flight, that anxiety, that stress that you're experiencing, and it will allow you to be more clear-headed. It'll allow the blood to flow back to your brain, and you'll be able to make choices and decisions that benefit you and everyone involved. The problem with emotional and psychological pain is that once it's experienced and you have that fight or flight experience, that you have the stress response that comes with that, it's etched into your memory. And every time you relive that event by thinking about it, you create the same physiological response in your body. You get that same fight or flight mechanism, at least for a while. I think that after a few years it dies down a bit, but that's not necessarily true. So for those of you guys who have had relationships in the past that have gone badly, and you're really angry about it, you carry around a lot of negative emotions associated with it. Every time you run that through your head, you're creating that sympathetic response, that anger, that cortisol, that adrenaline. It increases your heart rate, it increases your blood pressure. It releases all of these chemicals into your body, preparing you to run away or to fight for your life. And that is not going to work out well for you in the long run. That will be the source of illness, and not to mention just stress, hypertension, all of it. I mean, it's just a terrible thing to do. So if you can get rid of that by seeing this event as a non-personal experience, taking yourself and your interests out of this event and see it from this third-party perspective and see it from this higher place, I promise you, you will have more peace. Your life will become better. You'll be able to deal more calmly, not only with your wife, but with other things that pop up in your life that trigger that emotion. You'll be able to take control of that fight or flight mechanism and decide, is this really a threat? Or is this just something that's pissing me off? In addition to gaining the emotional control to understand that fight or flight mechanism and to be able to see life from a different perspective and to be able to navigate problems from a more methodical perspective, I was also able to get a better sense of my priorities and my personal values as they relate solely to me. And I know that sounds selfish in some ways, but it's really critically important for finding fulfillment in your life. Because unless you can define that, what that fulfillment actually is and what it means to you, you'll never really be able to wrap your hands around it. You'll always be chasing after ghosts. So the critical thing there is to really ask yourself, and maybe for the very first time, what's really in your head? What's in your heart? What's in you that's important, that you want, that you need, that you desire, that you want for a fulfilling life, that you see yourself doing? Where is your imagination taking you? If it was just you from now on, what would that life look like? Because when you are able to do that, it helps you redefine yourself, and those values start to fall into place, and then your decisions from that point forward are going to follow those values. And then all the people around you are going to fall in line with that as well. Especially now that you don't have an ex-wife or a wife, or even if you're still married, it's still a helpful thing to do, because by being clearer about your own personal frame and letting everyone else know what that is in terms of your values and your preferences in life, people will allow it, people will support it, people will encourage it even. So I think it's critically important, and this is one of the things that I learned from my divorce and my marriage, was that by establishing those things, I became happier, I became healthier, I became stronger, and my relationships with people became smoother, because I knew exactly how they fit into that frame and what my role was in that frame with them. Yeah, it just makes life much, much more, it just allows life to flow more naturally. I guess that's really what it is. But I think a lot of guys never do that. And when you're in a marriage, you feel like you're dedicating your life, or you're sacrificing your life to some degree to this relationship in order to make sure that it works, and to your family and to all of that. And well, the only guy that doesn't get any attention, or the person who doesn't get any fulfillment out of it, is you. And especially when you have children, because men tend to defer to the woman, to their wives, when it comes to child rearing. And so now you are literally submitting yourself in some way to her frame and her values and her preferences. And it's very easy to get lost in that. And so by establishing your own, you can create a safe space for yourself, a place where you can seek refuge in the most difficult times. One of the primary motivators for me was my curiosity, my need to understand. Seeking to understand what's happening is a much healthier approach to a divorce or to a failing relationship than anger. Anger is what comes first. Anger is natural, it's normal. Feeling betrayed, feeling all those negative emotions. But at some point you've got to set that crap aside, because it's not going to help you in the long run. You've got to seek to understand. And it's through that desire to understand and to expand your knowledge about what's happening here that you will experience a great deal of growth, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, because it's going to push you in directions that you never would have gone. And that's what happened to me. It pushed me into directions that I never would have gone on my own. It was my desire to make that relationship work that caused me to seek ways that I could be a stronger partner, that I could be a stronger father, I could be a stronger man on my own. And the benefit from all of that was that when she finally did leave, I was already to start on life 2.0. I was already in a strong place to launch a whole new life. And now 5 years later, yeah, it's like the best thing that ever happened to me. That divorce, and I guess subsequently that marriage, and then the divorce. So the marriage, then subsequently the divorce, made me better and gave me a better life than I ever probably would have come up with on my own. Quite honestly, I remember when I got married, I was kind of an idiot, you know? I was doing stupid shit all the time. And I probably would have continued doing stupid shit all the time. I was missing the point. I was missing the whole point of life, you know? And now I think I've kind of at least found a new purpose. And that purpose is, keeps me moving. It keeps me going forward. It keeps me engaging with life. And all life, not just my dogs, although they get a lot of it, but with my kids and even with other women. You know, it's a healthier, stronger, more confident approach to everything in life. And the thing about other women is, you know, for those people who want to go their own way, if you're approaching life from a position of strength, I mean from real strength, then they can't hurt you. They can't hurt you. They can't cause you any problems, because you are setting the boundaries and you will not allow them to cross those boundaries. And if they do, you just turn around and walk away. So I would suggest that it is possible, even after the worst of divorces, to seek out and have a relationship with a woman, not necessarily a marriage. I'm not saying you need to get the courts involved. I think that's not necessarily the best option. But to have a relationship with a woman that is healthy and is meaningful and is filled with good stuff. I think you can have some really good, solid, healthy relationships with women. I think you've got to know your boundaries, and you've got to be the man that you need to be in order to make that relationship successful. Because although you can blame her all you want, and I'm sure every bit of that blame is 100% earned, you're still there. You were still in there when it happened. You made the choices that allowed it to happen. You were part of the problem, and you have to accept responsibility for the part that you played. Now, there are a handful of guys who were completely innocent and had nothing to do with it except the fact that they married the wrong woman. That's certainly a possibility. But the more you can look at the situation and see the role that you played in it, the more opportunities you have to grow and become a better, stronger, healthier man. And if you don't ever identify whatever that was, that will always be your blind spot. That's where they're going to get you. That's where it's going to happen again. That's where you're going to repeat the same process. That's why it's not just about taking responsibility to blame yourself. That's not it. It's taking responsibility so that you can learn from it and prevent that kind of shit from happening again. That's the key. That's the key. And that's how your marriage and your divorce can be a benefit. So when guys come to me and they say, hey, John, I got this really cool girlfriend. I'm thinking about getting married. Do you think I should do it? It's like, yeah, why not? The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a divorce. And you know something? You might just turn out to be a much better guy after that. Now you can say, oh, what about the money? What about my house? What about this? What about that? And all those things, yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're definitely going to probably pay a price if that happens. If you go through a marriage and a divorce, there's a good chance that it's going to be economically painful, emotionally painful. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. But there is no growth without pain. So running away from the pain is not an option. You have to run into it. You have to go, now use your head, don't just go running blindly, you know, but you've got to, you can't spend your life avoiding the possibility that something might go wrong. You can't. You have to embrace life. You have to have experience. You're not here to sit on the sidelines. You're here to get in the game. So get in the fucking game, you know? Do it smart. Be the best man that you can. Plan it in advance. Be the man that you need to be in order to have the relationship that you want to have. If you're not that guy yet, then figure it out. Figure out how you become that guy. Because until then, you're vulnerable. You know, you're in a vulnerable position and you probably should not be getting into serious relationships. But once you feel like you're there and you feel like you're in a place where you can have a healthy, strong relationship based on mutual boundaries and mutual respect, and you can build a strong friendship with a woman, and love is just a small part of that. I mean, love is important. Don't get me wrong, love is important. But respect and boundaries and friendship, they are way more important than love. Love is, you know, what you get at the beginning. It's all that mushy-gushy stuff that feels good and smells funny. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, respect and friendship go a lot further than any amount of love. All right, I think I've said all I can say on that. I don't know, I might make another video about this in the future because I don't think I got it all in there, but I think I got a lot of it in there. All right, that's enough. I'm out. Please like and subscribe. Leave me some comments. I'm sure I probably pissed off some of you guys. Let me know what you think. Share the video if you think it'd be helpful to somebody. And yeah, until next time, stay healthy. And if you can, stay single.